Tim Ryerson here with StudentAthleteWorld.com. Today we're going to talk about creating a top 20 list. Now this is for seniors only. If you're an underclassman, obviously you can listen and learn, but remember, we want to caution you that one of our main concepts with our program is that during the underclassman years we want to gather as much interest, and we never want to narrow down or eliminate schools from consideration until the end of the process. So you would actually want to do the exact opposite of what we're going to talk about today. Before you seniors, we're at the time of the year now where you may want to narrow down your list of schools. So one thing you want to remember when you're creating this top 20 list is to diversify. Similar to that in the stock market, you don't want to put all of your eggs into one basket. So for most cases, you want a good mix between Division I schools, Division II schools, Division III schools, NAIA, and junior college schools. So maybe think about it like 5 schools from each of those categories would go into your top 20 list. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to use our college match program. If you haven't done that already, you definitely should. From our client login page, you'll see a member name and a password to be able to use this college match program. What you want to do with that is it'll ask you for your ACT, SAT score, your GPA, the types of schools that you want to consider, the results of your scouting evaluation. You'll put all this information in, and very similar to a dating website where it matches you with compatible mates, this college match program will match you with schools that match your academic, athletic, and social needs. So use the college match program. It will pull up a number of results that are a good fit for you. From that program, then, you can simply click on the name of the school, and it'll take you to that school's website where you can do some additional research. Or you can click on the coach's name, and it will pop up through your email browser an email to that coach as well. And you'll also find the coach's phone number in that program as well. And we'll talk more about that later. What I want to talk about right now is things to consider when you're researching schools and starting to narrow down schools. The first thing is distance. Obviously, the wider the range of schools you're willing to consider, the better your options, the more schools that are out there for you. I always would encourage you, even those of you that say, I want to stay within 2 or 3 hours of home, or I want to stay in-state, I would encourage you, at least, if that fits what you're thinking is, at least consider stretching that by an hour or two. If you're 5 hours from home, it's still pretty easy to get home a couple weekends a year for the holidays, things like that. Your first semester as a freshman, you're going to be so concerned about getting home. By the time you're a sophomore, being 2 hours away or being 8 hours away is going to basically be the same thing, because you're not going to want to come home. You're going to want to be at school, you'll come home for the holidays, and so keep that in mind. The second thing is the size of the school. Oftentimes kids will tell us that they don't want to go to a small school, or they don't want to go to a school smaller than their high school. What I always tell kids to consider is, at your high school, because you have kids that aren't going to go to college, kids that are, when you're 18, kids that are 14 years old that are freshmen, you have a lot of kids that you're not going to talk to. You have a small niche of your friends with common interests. At a college that's the same size as your high school, say for example a college with 1,500 or 2,000 students, all of those kids are adults, and they all also have very similar or more similar interests because they all chose to go to that specific school. So a 2,000 enrollment high school is very different from a 2,000 enrollment college, and college is different. Even if it's a small school, it's going to be very different from what you might expect. The third factor to consider is level of play. This is probably most important to you now, because you want to tell your kids in your high school, hey, I'm going D2, or I'm going D1, or I'm going this level or that level. In the long run, it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter when you're 50 years old and looking back on your college playing career, and it's not going to matter a year from now when you're in practice working hard competing for a championship. There's so many other things more important than that. Don't let that be the number one factor that creates problems for you in the recruiting process. Keep an open mind in terms of level of play. The fourth thing to consider is the academics of the school. Many of you tell us that academics are the most important thing in finding the right major and finding the right school. That's very true. Of course, we encourage that thinking. But also realize that the average college student changes their major 3 times, and the average professional changes their career 5 times. So try not to get locked into, I have to go to this school because it has this program. There's a good chance even if you went to that school for that program, you wouldn't end up in that school in that program. Another thing to consider is the public versus private debate. Another thing we hear a lot, I have to go to public school because it's less expensive. That may be true. In many cases that is true, but you do not know that until you get a financial aid offer from each individual school. Oftentimes for kids with family need that are really good students, they're able to go to private schools for less money than they would pay at a public school, and sometimes get a great education and great bargain out of that process. So don't let that be a factor at the beginning. Wait till you see the dollars and cents until you say this school is too expensive or this school is in our range. Probably the most important thing to consider is one that a lot of kids never do, and that's what's the coach like and what are my teammates like. Those are, you're going to spend a lot of time with your coaches and teammates. You want to make sure you develop a great relationship with them during the recruiting process. You get a good feel for their transparency. You talk to current players on the team now and ask them what the coaches are really like, what the program is really like. In today's age with social networking, texting, video sharing, it's so easy for this to happen. So make sure you're not missing that opportunity. Another thing to consider in the process, how much time are you going to want to spend away from your sport? Are you going to want to get involved in student government, in choir, in having a job outside of school, in hanging out with friends? Or do you want to devote most of your time in college to hitting the books and playing your sport? Find out what that is to you, because that will influence the type of program that you want to go into. Now, there's some programs that very easily mesh outside interests versus academics and athletics, and other programs it's nearly impossible to get involved in things outside of sports and school. So think about that and talk about that with the people that are recruiting you. Finally, the last point is something that I've realized through my coaching career, which I think is really important. Find out how important that sport is at your school. How much the administration supports that sport, how dedicated the community is to coming to the games or to supporting, making it a big deal. That's something that's really important, and that's not equal at every school. For example, in Division III with 400 some schools are very, very good tradition and history and fan following and fanfare that goes along with being a part of a specific sport. And at other schools, it can be maybe more like an intramural sport. What's important to you and what kind of program do you want to fit in with? So those are some things to consider. After you've considered all those options, after you've done the research, looking at the schools, looking at the U.S. News and World Report is another good resource. All this information is on our client login page on our website. After you've made your list and you've said, I want to target these schools, and remember, you've diversified that list into different levels of play, then what you want to do is you want to reach out to these schools and you want to tell them, honestly, I have narrowed my college choice down to 20 schools. Your school is one of those 20 schools. The reason that I chose your school is because of this, this, and this. What you're doing there is you're telling the coach, you're being honest in the process and telling them why you're interested in their school, that you have some other schools to consider, and that they've kind of made a finalist list for you. Contact that coach personally. Now, through our client login, you can click on templates and you can see a list of maybe 20 different emails that you would send to a college coach. Change the wording, add in your specific taste, and copy and paste that letter, go right into our college match program, click on the coach's name again, send that coach a personal letter saying exactly what I've just mentioned. You're on our list, here's why, here's a little bit about me, and so on. What you want to get from this is you want to get an opportunity to visit the school. Offer to the coach in your letter that you want to come visit and work that out with them on what day you'll visit and when that visit will take place, and then visit these schools. Only after you've communicated with all 20 coaches and offered some visits. Now, you may not be able to visit all 20 schools, but maybe some of the schools that you're most interested in and they're most interested in you, you may go visit. After this process, then what I want you to do is rank the schools on a 1 to 20 basis on this is my top choice, my second choice, my third choice, and so on. But don't do this ranking before you have the facts. It's really just wasting time. Get as much information, as much communication as possible, and then you're going to rank the schools. One last comment as we get down to narrowing down the schools is that don't be in such a hurry to say no to the schools that are recruiting you. You don't have to do them the favor of letting them know that you're not going to consider that school. Keep your options open. Things change in the recruiting process, and the coaches aren't necessarily going to do that favor to you and let them know when they've decided to recruit another player at your position that they like better. They're going to keep you in the loop in case they lose that player. You need to do the same thing. You need to keep all of the coaches that you're seriously looking at in the loop and let them know that you're very interested in their school, and the chips will fall where they fall after you make your final decision. I hope this was helpful. Feel free to give us a call at any time, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks with our next webinar. Thanks so much.